Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel once again, and this is the 7th video in our Chainlit tutorial series so far. We have seen how we can build our first user interface where you can chat with your chatbot, and you can download how you can download models from Llama website, how you can use PostgreSQL to build your own persistent chat history, and previously we had also seen how you can upload and um, read documents and chat with your documents using your language model. In this video, we're going to be looking at how you can use a thinking model to start, visualize or render a thinking step into your front end. And just like how you might have seen in ChatGPT O series models where they have a thinking step or a thinking UI element in which you can click and it will expand, it will show you all of the chain of thoughts and before it prints the final output. So we're going to be doing something similar to that here. Let me show you what it actually looks like. So if I give into this text hi, it is going to print this UI element in the front end called thinking. Now this thinking is it's taking some time because it's taking time to load the model into the memory, and once the model is loaded, you can click on it to expand to see all the chain of thought tokens. These are just what the model is thinking, and this is the model's final output. So it will even show you for how long it has thought, and you can click on it to expand it or to compress it. And if the way we're going to be doing it is that we will also build a settings panel in which we can list all of our models, and we can switch between them, and we also have a toggle button that we can on and with which we can on and off or turn on or turn off our thinking for our thinking models. Now Qwen 3 is a thinking model in Qwen family, but Qwen 2.5 is not a thinking model. So as you've just seen that since when our thinking button was turned on, the model outputted a thinking chain of thought, which we could visualize into our thought step. But if I turn it off and confirm the setting, and now if I give it a prompt, it is not going to output the chain of thought tokens anymore. And if I switch to the other model, and even if I turn the thinking on, this model cannot think. So since I just switched the model, it's going to take some time to load it into the memory. And once it will be loaded, we will be able to see the output pretty soon. Yeah. So as you can see, this model does not outpush the thinking tokens, and therefore there's no thinking step UI element in the front end. But if I switch back to our previous model, as the thinking is enabled, I confirm this and I give it hi, and it will start thinking again, and we can see what it's thinking inside of its step, and all of it is live. As you can see, it's updating, and once the thinking is over, it'll show you for how long it has thought and the final output. Now let's head over to the code. So now that we are into our code, let's see what are the requirements, how do we approach it. So first things first, we are going to import our libraries that we will need for, first of all, making our settings panel. So we are going to import select and switch from Chainlit's input widget class. The next thing we're going to do is that we will make a settings panel using Chainlit's chat settings class, in which we will give our select widget, which will make the selection the selection panel. I mean the selection option where we can switch between. We can tell what it is. Actually, it's a model, and the label to display would be Qwen 3. And these are the two models I've given into it. This is the Qwen 3 and the Qwen 2, and then we will decide which would be its initial index when the chat will be loaded, because this is going to load on chat starts. The moment you will start a chat, this will be loaded, right? Then we're gonna go ahead and create the exact same thing into our And yeah, lastly, we will set this as a session variable so that we can call the same thing anywhere else to use it. And the next thing we'll do is create exactly the same thing into our own chat resume. So this way, when you're toggling or switching between different chat sessions, then this will be created inside of those sessions as well. This is basically the same thing. And we will also set this setting as into our system, session, the session variable. All right, so after this, now we will need to find a way to change these settings. As the settings are changing, we need to find a way. This will be reflected into the front end immediately, but we need to find a way to take elements from these settings in order to make changes into our front end or the way we are using the logic for that. And for that, we are going to do a major change into our cl.on message function. So previously we had an async function in which we were calling the stream, which we had the stream inside of it, and we were using the event creator to make the loop. But this time we are going to remove that function completely, and this is directly we're just calling the stream on Ollama chat, and here we will set a thinking variable to be false, and we will have time calculation, obviously, because this is the way we're going to be calculating how much time it will take for our model to finish its thinking, and a final answer. So this will just be a CL message that we are creating. This is what we will be updating as our final text, and the steps will be our thinking step. So if settings think is there, so if this is true, and settings is showing an error because we have not called the setting here, so we simply need to just get settings from our system variable, the session variable, cl.user session.get and settings. Now that we have our settings imported into this function from the session, and the warning is gone. Okay, so if the settings think is enabled, then we will start this step. This step we have named it thinking, and the type is LLM. Now the type is important, otherwise it will not show you the output in the front end. So we create this, we open this, as a thinking step object, and we will loop through our stream. So another important thing to notice here is that inside of Ollama chat function, there is a think parameter. Now this think parameter can be toggled on and off for thinking models, but it won't work very well for non-thinking models. If you turn this on for non-thinking models, it's going to throw you an error. So we're going to be working with it. We're going to see how we will fix that later. But for now, if this will go in as true. So if we toggle our setting to be true, this will become true. So that means thinking has been turned on. So as the thinking is on, so if settings.think is on, then this step will be rendered in the front end. And so we will be looping through our stream, and from the stream we will be getting, from our chunk we will be getting message dictionary, and from that dictionary we'll be getting thinking key. Thinking key. And if it's not there, we'll have an empty string. So if think, basically if this is there, then we'll turn the thinking variable on, or this is the boolean, so we will turn this boolean to be true, and we will print that or stream the thinking tokens into the front end using the thinking step. We are going to stream through this. So this is how it's going to print the thinking tokens inside of this step, as we had seen it previously. So otherwise, if think is over, so after streaming up until a certain time, when the model's thinking tokens are over, it is going to hit this part. So elif settings think and thinking. So if settings if our thinking toggle was turned on and it was thinking previously, then this part will be printed. So we'll come into this statement, but this is just for our logging. We are not this doesn't have any reflection in the front end. But So we will turn off our thinking, and thought duration we will calculate. So if you remember previously, we had started our time here, and that time was being calculated, and in the backend we are going to calculate. I mean, this started our time, instantiated it, and here we are finalizing it. So the final time is being subtracted from the current time, and this way we're going to get the total number of duration that we got. So that will become our new name for our thinking step. This step's name was thinking. So as it was going on, as you saw previously, it was rendering, it was flashing this text. But when the thinking has finished, then it is going to change the name to this thought for this many seconds. And we're going to be await. We will await for its update to finish, and we will break the loop because this stream still has remaining tokens to be coming. So we're going to be breaking that loop here, and we will continue the iteration on the stream object. I mean the generator further. And the next thing we will have is for chunk in stream content. So we're gonna get, this time we will get the content. Previously, when the thinking was turned on, we were getting the thinking tokens from our model, but when the thinking token exhausted, then the model will start outputting the real text, I mean the final text, which we'll get from the content variable, I mean the content key, from the message dictionary. So if there is content, then assistant response will be added. So this will be added to the assistant. I mean, we will build our assistant's response to feed into our chat history from the final token rather than from the thinking. So the thinking part is generally in thinking paradigm. We don't really store our thinking or the chain of thought tokens into our memory, and only we could store it, but it's just going to, because sometimes some models think for so long that it's going to create a token overload of chat in the chat history if you store all of the chain of thought tokens as well. So that's why here we are only going to store the final generated content, because that's what will have the actual content that the model will use in the next step in the conversation to answer the user's query and to remember the past conversation. So the chain of thought tokens doesn't really contribute anything or add anything extra into our conversation itself. So we don't need that unless we are doing some really deep reasoning like mathematics or programming. But anyway, for our use case, we are only appending the final answer tokens, not the chain of thought. All right, so this is why we are updating our output, the output token, and we're streaming that there. So the steps was over already when the thinking step, I mean the thinking tokens expired, or I mean exhausted, and then the final output content started to stream into our final answer, and then we will await for it to be over, to be sent into front end fully, and then finally we're going to be appending our assistant response that we had built into our chat history. So this is a pretty substantial change that we have done here, and basically this overall change into our code was necessary to incorporate all of the thinking and to print the final output. So if in case the thinking was turned off, this entire step will be skipped, and we will directly jump to the content of our message dictionary that we'll receive from our model. Now, one thing that we would like to do here is that what will happen if basically, so think about it. If our model, if the user had chosen a model which cannot think, if he or she or the user has set the settings, the thinking toggle to true, then this is going to throw an error. So we don't want that. So what we will do is we'll simply create, so even instead of passing the models here, we're going to be creating a model, a global. So there are better ways to do this, obviously, but this is the easiest, I mean, the fastest way to implement this. So I'm just simply going to create a global variable of models, and this is going to help us by catching which model we are using. So we will know which model the user has selected in our own message. Basically, we will, when we get the settings here, so we can check that. Okay, so yeah, one more thing. We are not incorporating the model switching. We're not changing the model as the models are being switched, so we need to do that here real quick. So settings and models, and this will give us the name of the models that we are using. It's not S, just model. And obviously this will come after this. So we now have the name of the model that the settings that have been changed. Second, we have so we need to check if the model that we are even currently using is the thinking model or not. And the one way to do it is to hard code the fact that, because we know we have given a limited number of models to the front end or to the user to use, so we know which models to use, right? And so we know which models to use. So basically, we will in the backend we will hard code the ability to turn off thinking if a certain model which cannot think has been chosen from the front end. So the way to do it is simply, if here we're going to be checking that if so settings think equals to false if our model is equals to models 1. So if the model is the second one, which is Quen 2.5, which cannot think, so we will at that if that is the case, we are going to turn off the thing. We will just give we will make the thinking be false, right? So if the model is equal to thinking, if 1 and settings think, obviously if this was true, so let's put it first. So if this was true and models was this, otherwise simple. So this will be false if settings, if this was true and model that we have was the second model which cannot think, otherwise it's just going to be the same exact value. So we are done with this. Now if we have chosen a model which cannot think, we're just going to hard code it here. We can give it more. So right now we are only using 1, so that's why we are giving it the value 1 here. So if that is the case, before that, let me call it to be safe. Okay, so hopefully this should be enough. Let's see if our overall functionality is working or not. Let me rerun. Okay, let's try now. If I give it high, it's thinking. Alright. So I forgot to check which setting was turned on. It took some time to load the model into the memory. Now let's see, so it is Quen 3 0.6b. And if we turn off the thinking, let's see what happens now. And it did not think this time. Now if I switch to the other model and give it hey, it's going to take some time to load the model into memory. Once it's done, it will hopefully output our answer. And there it is. So let's see if what happens if we turn on the thinking for this model. And yep, no failure, no errors, but also no thinking, just like how we should be expecting. And I've switched to the previous model, the thinking model, and the thinking toggle is turned on. Let's see what happens now. And there we go. It is thinking, and we can see what is thinking live. The tokens are being live streamed in the front end. And once the thinking is over, it will show us for how long it has thought and final answer. So there you have it. You have successfully built or incorporated a thinking model into your Chainlit application. Congratulations. And in the next video, we're going to be looking at a few different changes into the front end. We're going to be building a small selections menu. Basically, you know how in ChatGPT you have a bunch of pre-written choices that you can switch from. So if you click one of those, ChatGPT will start giving you answers for the selected choice. So we're going to be building that and a few other front-end UI element tweaks. For example, we can change the color of these icons. Everything is here is very Chainlit themed. Everything is so pink, and we don't want that. What if we want to change the color of these buttons? I mean these highlights. So we will see how we can do that in the next one. Thank you very much for watching.